So today we're going to talk about tools, because I get really excited about tools and I really like to see the right tool being used for the right job, whether it's in the garden or it's in the kitchen. So on this end here I've got a couple of spades. I've got an ordinary spade. Here's a sort of standard spade, and if you're going to have one tool, no, if you're going to have two tools it needs to be a spade and a fork. So here's an ordinary English spade with a very nice handle, incidentally. We'll kind of come on to handles in a minute. We lived in Cornwall before we lived where we do now, and they had a lot of these, which as you can see has a broken handle. We're going to talk about handles in a minute. So this is a Cornish shovel if you lived in Cornwall, and actually this sort of shovel is the standard shovel that you get in Celtic countries. So you get the same sort of beast in Wales and Northern Ireland and all of Ireland and Britain. And it's perfect. If you've got a pile of stones, you need a shovel like that, not a shovel like this. So this is what the English call a shovel, and this is perfect for making cement or mixing up things, but it's absolutely hopeless for pushing into a pile of rocks. So I have both of them, and I think, you know, if possible you have both, but this is what you need for making cement. And then you get specialist spades, like this is a deeper one. This is for digging ditches, and sometimes they're even longer. This is one for getting down and narrow, or for planting trees. It's quite heavy, got a lot of weight to it. But if you're going to have one spade, you want that one. So down here, I've got a little pile of tools. This is a hoe without a handle, fairly standard hoe. And I wanted to say something about hoes, which is people often forget to sharpen them. The idea of a hoe with a handle is that you're moving through and you're cutting off small weed seedlings. So this edge needs to be sharp. So you can sharpen that. If you've got a grindstone, you can do it on a grindstone, but you can also actually just do it on a brick or a rock. So you're rubbing it backwards and forwards to get a nice sharp edge on that, so that it's actually cutting off the weeds. My favourite hoe is this one, which is a Swow. It's actually stainless steel, and I particularly like it because it's got two sharp edges. So you're cutting off weeds as you pull back, and then as you push. And then in recent years, I've got really excited about a whole collection of hoes. Two of these are Indian. This, which you can pull through with and also use for planting. And this one, which is a Japanese hoe, which has a very sharp edge. That's replaced, I use now for going through onions and things. And this one's a great little tool, really lovely, with a sharp edge in here, and then this little hook that you can use to pull back on things. So all of these are available through, actually all of these probably came through Garden Organics. Those two are made in Indian communities, so they help to support that Indian community as well. That one's Japanese. Forks and fork handles. Again, the point I want to make is that there's not one tool. The standard fork is this, you know, and that's the thing you need to have for most digging in various shapes and forms. But then there are other beasts as well. This is one which has much shorter tines that are much sharper, and I use this. I'm doing much less digging now, much less deep digging, so I use that for turning over the soil. Really nice little beast. This is a potato fork. So a specialist fork, which has, if you like, which has wider tines, so you're much less likely to impale your potatoes with that. And one of the things that I'm going to do shortly is put a handle on that because it's broken. And then this is a border fork, a fork for going in between plants in the border. So it's much smaller, and it has a horrible plastic handle. Which brings me to handles. So, in an earlier programme, there was a comment by somebody who'd broken their handle, and they were saying, how do I put a handle on something? And there were various answers, the majority of which were, well, I just buy a new one. And of course you can go and buy a new handle and put it in, or you can buy a new tool. And often it's much cheaper to buy the new tool. But I want to say that there's something really, for me, there's something very, very political about taking ownership of the process of putting in a new handle. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. But there's something that's very empowering about going out and buying a handle. This is a fork or spade handle, and then reinserting it into the bit that's broken. Because there are all sorts of rubbish that you can buy and get that tend to break off. And I'd much rather do without. And then there are some really beautiful handles like this, which, to be honest, now that this is broken off, there's not much you can do with that except turn it into a dibber. But you can buy handles with tops like that, which are beautiful to use, and they're a real work of craft in their creation. Is that you can also make them yourself, or find other bits of old tools in car boot sales or auctions that have handles on. This is an old pair of clippers which doesn't work anymore, but I've cut off the handle there and used it on a trowel, and similarly there's another one there. So you can get hold of in the rubbish or just looking out for them in boot sales, car boot sales, for handles. And that's what I'm going to do with this. This is a specialist tool meant for taking dandelions out of the lawn whose handle's broken. So I'm going to take this handle and put that onto there, cut it off, drill hole, insert. Very easy. All you need is a drill. And this one I'm particularly fond of. This was a handle made for me by Johannes, who's a friend of ours, who, again, old trowel, and he's just taken a bit of wood, whittled it with a penknife, and drilled a hole, insert trowel, off you go. And it's a very nice tool, very nice end there that I can fit my hand into, and gives you a bit more leverage on that longer handle. So now let's go and replace a handle where one's been broken. So when we talked about making this video, I had a look at my pile of tools that needed mending, and to my horror there were loads of them. Some of them have been there for a long time. Ones like this we used to use on the beach. My dad got this as an ex-army shovel, and we dug some serious sandcastles with this, but it's been broken for a long time and I'm not sure I'll ever get around to putting a handle on it. Things like this, which is a sledgehammer, this is such a huge sledgehammer that its handle's broken a number of times, because if you overshoot a tiny bit it just breaks the handle, but I need to do that sometime. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was this issue of how to put a new handle on something that's broken. The first thing is to get rid of the bit that's left of the old handle. So one like this, very nice fork, and you've got a number of choices really, or the main thing you need to do is get rid of this bit of wood, the bit of wood that's left in there. And the easiest way that I find is to burn that out. So if you can, wherever that is, whether you've got a fire at home or you can put it in a bonfire, then burn it out. But be careful not to get too hot, because what you don't want to do is to change the temper of the metal. So in other words, if you really get that really red hot, you can make it softer, which you don't want to do. So basically, put it in the fire until it sets fire, and then you'll burn out the wood. And then what happens is you get left with that. And there's two things you can do with that. So that's still got these rivets in it. There's two things you can do with that, and I'll show you in a moment. If you've only got a hacksaw, you can just saw through that, and then the two ends will drop out from either side. So you're just sawing through there with a hacksaw or a mini hacksaw, and then that lets you put the new handle in. Or you can get a grinder, if you've got one, a grindstone or even any stone, I suppose, a sharpening stone, and then just rub off one end, and then the rivet or the nail will drop out. So I'll show you how to do that in a second. But that's how to get it out. And then you've got your new handle, which may or may not fit, and you need to shape that a little bit. And I mean, the way I do that is with a rasp. So again, I'll show you that in a second. I rasp that off, but you could do it with a penknife or a chisel or anything that was sharp, just to get it deep enough to go right in, and then you refasten it. So here's the shovel that I need to put a new handle on. So usually there's a pin, a rivet of some kind, which has two ends on it, two ends like a nail on it. And what you need to do is to grind one end off, which you could do with a stone of some kind, or I'm lucky enough to have a grinder. So I just grind it off a little bit, put it on there. Grind the end off till till it's just a knob sticking up like that. So if you didn't have a grinder, you could use a stone if you had one like that, or any stone that you have for sharpening knives. Or, you know, ultimately you could do it with a bit of stone or a bit of concrete. If you rubbed hard enough, you'll rub the end off that nail. Or of course a file. So you know, a file of any kind really. You could file off that the knob with a file. I appreciate that you do need some tools to do this, but they don't have to be that complicated. And then, with a bit of luck and a bit more of the other thing, this is a punch, but you could use another nail or even a fat screw or something to bang this out. I'm having a bit of trouble with me banging. There it is. Get that jammed out in. So there I've got the nail there. So now I can get that out. A bit of luck with a. I'm too old and weak. I'm going to use some nail pullers instead, I think. I'm going to use my big nail pullers, yeah. Ridiculous, isn't it? There we come. There we go. So that's got that out. A little bit of nail. You. Right, it's coming now. Need to bang it with something, don't I? Yeah. Bang on this out. I need something to bang on there. So I was having trouble getting that out just by smacking the end of the bit of wood. So I'm going to hit it with a. This is a coal chisel. Whack it out that way. Is it coming? Yeah, it's coming. There we are. Oh, not quite. Still not quite. Hard to believe. Hooray! Out at last. So one of the things I realised is that, you know, it's not always going to be easy, this task, but I really want to encourage people to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to put a new handle in a beautiful shovel like this and to give it another life rather than to chuck it away. So persevere and keep going, as I just had to do getting that blooming thing out, which is much more difficult than I'd expected. So I went and bought this handle from a place called Mole Valley Farmers, which is basically provides stuff for farmers, and if you've got one of those around, you can buy one. It cost me 10 quid. You know, and as I said before, you know, maybe that seems like a lot of money, but that's a beautiful ash handle which should now last forever. And it's been shaped, the bottom's properly shaped, as is the top, so it actually just fits in. If it didn't just fit in, then you might need to do a bit of rasping, and I use this little beast, which is basically a cheese grater, to rub that off. Or as I say, you could use a penknife or anything else to make sure that it's going to go deeply into the slot. And then you need to make sure that's well whacked on. And then the way that I fasten it is this. I take a drill. And drill a hole through. There's one or more holes that are going to go through. So sometimes there'll be a second hole there, and so I'm aiming for there. Speed required. Might have do that if it's going from both sides. It's quite hard to see exactly where you're going. There we are. I've got a hole right through, which is smaller than the nail I'm going to put through, because it is indeed a nail that I'm going to put through. So no doubt there are special tools or special things that you can do with this. I use a 6-inch nail, or a 4-inch nail actually, which is obviously shorter than the 6-inch nail. And having made the hole, I'm then going to smack that through the hole. And there we are, beautiful, finished. No. So I'm really trying to limit this in terms of the tools that you need. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to saw that off with a hacksaw. So now hacksaw is something you're going to need for this job, either to get rid of those pins that were there before, or now to cut this off. So I'm going to saw that off using an ordinary junior hacksaw. If you've got a bigger hacksaw, you could use that. So sawing it off quite close to the base. Sharper hacksaw blades are available, and then I'm going to belt that with a hammer because I don't want that sharp edge there. So I'm going to do that on my vise on the ground. Obviously you could do it on a rock or anywhere else, but somewhere that's going to hold the other end, and then I'm going to beat the hell out of this. Check the other side, perfect. So now I've effectively made another end to the nail by flattening that down a bit. Slightly rough, so I'm gonna file that a tiny bit just to flatten that off. Or just make sure there's no rough bits, because obviously you don't want that to be potentially hitting your fingers. Lovely job. So there we are. Probably, hopefully, that will last for the rest of my life.